Hello, 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 everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. We're going to be reading the last two of our 12 houses, talking about the archetype wheel. So I've saved 11 and 12 to read last because the last four were a bit longer. Hold on, I have to move something here really quick. All right. And then there's just a couple sentences after we're done talking about the 11th and 12th house, and then we'll be ready to move on to chapter 8. So the 11th house is our connection to or relationship to the world. And the chakras connected to the 11th house are the 4th and 6th chakra. So that's going to be, let's see. I'm trying to think. Okay. Ever since we started from top to bottom instead of bottom to top, I've lost obviously the ability to know exactly which chakra is where going from top to bottom. Root, sacral, solar, heart. Okay. So the 4th and 6th chakra, so that's the heart and the third eye. The 11th house corresponds to Aquarius, the third air sign, and it rules your relationship to the external world and your ideas about the outer sphere. Your viewpoint about life in general is connected to the energy of this house. Those sentiments reflect how you see your sense of power operating within the social or global environment. People who are drawn to paths of service that have global consequences, such as environmental causes or international peace work, have strong connections to the energy of this house. Optimism or pessimism about the future of humanity is an extension of the spiritual energy of the 11th house. The 11th house rules how you relate to creativity, to humanity, and engages the energies of your 4th and 6th chakras, which regulate your heart and mind. The presidential race between George W. Bush and Al Gore was an archetypal 11th house tug of war. The difficulties in deciding who had won the election focused national attention on the power that individuals do have to change the whole future of humanity. As a result, Americans seriously evaluated the importance of single votes as never before. That sounds like sort of what happened this time, with making sure we voted for many important reasons, as we should every time, but it seems that certain elections certainly take a different place in history than others. All right. People who are empowered by an attitude that says anything is possible live in an energy field of pure 11th house potential. They are frequently larger than life, precisely because they do think in global terms. For them, 11th house perceptions flood into their first thoughts of the day and are the last to leave their minds as they retire at the end of the day. People like Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi, who created new awareness in the mind and soul of all humanity, embody the influence of the 11th house. As they peered through the lens of their 11th house into the global village, they saw the possibilities for positive change against impossible odds. Not all people need to start or participate in a cause to contribute positive energy to the planet. I meet countless people who energize powerful attitudes about life, such as, all people are basically good, and who help those in need. These people nurture the entire human soul. As Jesus said, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." Matthew 25:40. Developing the capacity to see the whole of life as beautiful and to see people as essentially loving beings is like participating in a spiritual environmental movement. We have no way of measuring the power of a single thought, yet we know that attitudes and beliefs have universal consequences. Spiritual masters, popular leaders, scientific geniuses, and great artists who are dedicated to serving humanity all illustrate what good can be generated by dedicating your spirit to incarnating a single perception. For instance, Copernicus reordered humanity's understanding of planetary movements by disputing the notion that the Earth was the center of the solar system. That one thought dismantled the scientific paradigm of his time. One day the earth appeared flat, and the next day it was round. A single perception reshaped the collective view of the globe. You too may be the channel through which an entirely new understanding of reality will manifest. Review your life and relationships. Look for changes that you have inspired in others who then went on to move mountains in their own lives. Most of the mountains we deal with are not necessarily enormous global movements, but everyday challenges or invisible forces, like attitudes. Generations benefit from even one parent deciding to become a more active father to his children, or to stop hating people who are different from him. When John Lennon effectively retired from public life to care for his infant son Sean, for instance, the concept of the house husband was essentially unheard of. Lennon took considerable abuse for supposedly trading in his guitar for an apron, and yet his example formed a model that millions of men have since embraced, much to the delight of their wives or partners and children. Maintaining that single thought form, nurturing it with loving attention and an ever-deepening appreciation for what it means to live in an interconnected universe, transmits spiritual electricity to the collective system. Great spiritual masters have continually directed their students to become aware of the power of their own spirits. In an effort to enlighten their students about their inner potential, such leaders echo the words of the Buddhist patriarch Bodhidharma. "I am but a finger pointing to the moon. Don't look at me, look at the moon." When Jesus said of his miraculous healings, "All this and more can you do if you have faith," his message was clear. Each person can become a force for the transformation of the whole of humanity if only we recognize and live according to the true nature of the divinity within. I actually disagree with that. I think Jesus literally meant he was trying to show us exactly what we could do if we carried the same faith as him. Not an example. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because it's off the topic and it sort of takes away from the subject. And that's a whole other subject we can talk about when it comes to Jesus at a different time. But I disagree a little bit with that statement. I think he actually meant you can do this too. You just need to follow my faith and my belief and walk fully in God's will. That's the easiest way I'll say it. Okay. Okay. The external world is but a manifestation of the authority of our internal life. In the Chicago suburbs of Des Plaines, Illinois, is a Carmelite monastery. For only one afternoon many years ago, the Carmelite nuns permitted a group of people to visit a very limited portion of the interior space of their cloister. I was among that group, and I can vividly recall their stark dining room, their private cells with bare white walls, and the long corridor that led to rooms we would never enter. As soon as we were all seated in the reception area, the abbess spoke to us about the spiritual significance of the nuns' commitment. Living under a vow of silence and in a continual state of prayer on behalf of all people, these women believed that all their prayers resulted in outpourings of grace from the divine upon the humanity they almost never saw. A few nuns were permitted to speak with the visitors that afternoon, and I asked one why she believed that the prayers of a group of 17 women could possibly affect the world community. "I can tell by your question," she said, "that you have yet to truly need the power of a single prayer." Years later in Paris, I had the opportunity to have dinner with the Tibetan Buddhist teacher Sogyal Rinpoche. Among the many stories he shared with me was the story of his master's death. When it was time for my master to die, he called together his students and his astrologers, Rinpoche said. He announced that he was now preparing to leave and asked his astrologers to cast a chart with the intention of locating the perfect time for him to withdraw his spirit from the earth. He wanted to leave as silently as he could so as not to cause disruption. Sogyal Rinpoche also explained that the power of one enlightened spirit is strongly involved in holding in balance the positive and negative energies in life. The archetype that resides within your 11th house is symbolic of how you view the power of your spirit in relation to the whole of life. The victim archetype on that house, which I have often seen, can suggest that you find the world an intimidating place, where everyone has more authority over your life than you do. On the other hand, I've also seen the victim in this position in charts of people who are on fire with courage and optimism. For them, the victim becomes a symbol of the negative energy they refuse to give into, pushing themselves to the limits to help themselves and others avoid ever being victimized. Archetypes in the 11th house cause us to elevate how we see our place in the world and how we measure our sense of power. My graduate teacher of Christology told me that the more aware you are of the power of your spirit, the less you have to travel physically, because you can send your thoughts and prayers to do the work for you. It may be difficult to apprehend that even while hanging out in your own home, your thoughts are influencing the whole of life, but that truth is something we are all under contract to learn. The shadow side of the power of one mind can be seen in people such as Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Charles Manson, and Jim Jones. The characteristics of the shadow side of the 11th house feed on the ego that makes one believe that the entire globe can be transformed according to the dictates of one's desires. The psyches of people in whom this shadow is active are like spider webs. They lure and entrap the multitudes who are in search of someone to give them a vision of what life could be like if they, the powerless, had authority over others. As history tells us, such negative 11th house perceptions inevitably implode, taking their supporters with them. And now we go on to the 12th house, which is connected to the unconscious, and also our 6th and 7th chakra, so the third eye and the crown. Let me take a look at, okay, almost done. The 12th house corresponds to the third water sign, Pisces, which is the sign of intuition, of gut instinct. This is Persephone's house, the underworld ruled by Pluto, or what I would call the major channel into deeper guidance. The 12th house rules the unconscious mind as well as our innermost fears. The energetic nature of this house pushes our underground images into our mind through every available portal. Dreams, conversations, synchronistic encounters, any means that provide an opportunity to see a fragment of our contract in action. Uncovering your unconscious requires your intellect, intuition, and spiritual aspirations. And so this house resonates with the energies of the 6th and 7th chakras. Your intuitive abilities are part of the energy of this house. Refer to the meaning of the first house and review the circular journey of the archetypal wheel. Note that the other houses relate to rational and emotional aspects of your nature. Forming your identity and choosing your values are largely products of the physical world. Finding a union with another person and evaluating whether you want to continue to carry your tribe's symbolic DNA in your system is very much an emotional and psychological issue. Completion of this circle, however, leads you to your intuitive voice. Intuition is our primal sense. Long before we are introduced to rational thinking, we sense life. As babies, we absorb the energy climate of the world we live in, including the emotions of our parents and the atmosphere of our home. As we grow older, the rational abilities of the mind develop, and the intuitive experiences that many children describe, such as seeing angels, are dismissed as imagination. These psychic forces then go underground, although usually they do not completely go silent. I am convinced that the polarity between our rational and intuitive selves creates an inner atmosphere that sets the stage for intense suffering and depression. To sense energy information but then repress that information for lack of rational support is to court madness. Oh, isn't that the truth? Learning to speak archetypes and see symbolically awakens and uses your intuition. The archetypal pattern that resides in your 12th house is your guide into your underground. Although your fears may seem multitudinous, I'm not sure if I said that right. Each one is ultimately just a different version of fear of change, which is by far the most powerful obstacle to the ultimate irrational act of spiritual surrender. I think we as a human species, we like to think we're really good with change and we can go with the flow. But when it comes down to it, change, especially the older you get, can be really impossible and really scary. If you're older, maybe like in your 40s or older than that, not that that's old, but I'm just saying if you're older than those ages, you can probably think back to a time when you were in your teens or even your earlier mid-20s, and you can think about how fearless you may have been compared to becoming older. Some people, not always, some people get braver as they get older. They really throw caution to the wind. But a lot of us lose that sense of fearlessness as we grow older, as we grow. I wouldn't even say wiser, because sometimes we're not wiser, but as the longer we're here on earth, we'll just say that. I say that because I'm 43 and I'm not old, and I'm not going to say older in that way. It's a state of mind. Oh wait, I already read that. Let's see. Your 12th house experiences carry the theme of surrender, as in the scene from It's a Wonderful Life, in which George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, contemplating suicide on a bridge over an icy river, finally reaches his breaking point and cries out to God for help. A few years ago, I met a woman named Chris, who was herself at a breaking point. Her husband had been arrested for extortion, and the authorities had taken all of their possessions in an effort to recover the money he had stolen. Their lives went from a fairy tale couple with 2 children living in a charming home to a destitute family living off the charity of family members. Chris had the stamina and strength of a soldier, the archetype in her 12th house. She had chosen the soldier not just because it helped her cope with her problems, but also because she had always been the one to fight the battles for the family's emotional survival. Her father was a military officer who condemned any form of emotional openness, and her brothers were alcoholics. Because her mother was not capable of coping with so much dysfunction, Chris had become a lightning rod from her earliest days for all the tension in the house. On a more mundane level, Chris chose the soldier because it represented strength, dedication, loyalty, and honor, qualities that she felt were among the highest that one could aspire to. At the time I met Chris, she was in crisis. Without self-pity, she nonetheless had reached the point at which she was questioning why she had to endure so much, while those around her could live in abusive ways. Was questioning why she had to endure so much while those around her could live in abusive ways. Okay, and I thought I read that wrong. I was on the brink of a nervous breakdown, she told me. I had no one to talk to and no idea of where to go or what to do next. My entire life had changed in one afternoon, the afternoon of her husband's arrest. To gather symbolic information that could help Chris decide how to proceed, I directed her to think in the language of the soldier. I always did think of my childhood as boot camp, she joked. Then I asked her to describe everything in her life that was involved with her present crisis as if she were a soldier. To begin with, she responded, I was always taking orders from my dad. When I wanted to do something for myself, I had to sneak past enemy lines to get out on my own. This pattern did not change after I got married. Obviously, I married in the pattern of my family, except that my father is an honest man. All the while, my husband was breaking the law. I knew something was wrong. His moods were changing, and he was becoming more and more withdrawn and secretive. But he kept insisting that he was just tired from the stress at work. I didn't listen to my gut instinct, which is a soldier's best weapon. While he was living in this secret world, I could feel myself bracing for a war, an invisible emotional battle that would tear our marriage apart. I just couldn't find the enemy. I knew he wasn't cheating on me with another woman, but I never dreamed that he was stealing. Chris's husband was eventually caught because he left a paper trail at his office and his superiors followed it. I asked Chris to separate this from this trauma and think like a soldier who had just been asked the question, what are your worst fears? She said that her strongest fear was having her life spun out of control. That is precisely why I married someone who I thought had what it took to keep order in our lives. At the same time, I resented the fact that I was surrounded by so much male authority. I also resented that I was allowing myself to be ordered around. I wasn't blind to that fact. I simply liked the feeling that I was being looked after, as I was when my family was living on an army base. But now that's changed, and my life has been shattered as if a bomb hit it. I have to take care of myself because I feel that I need to leave my marriage and get on with my life. Breaking point experiences are classic to the 12th house, and Chris's marriage reflected that kind of drama. Obviously, her contract with her husband did not include that he would become a thief. That was a choice he made, but he also had the option to make positive choices. If a soldier were to ask for your advice, I asked Chris, what would you say in this situation? Chris said that she would order the soldier to draw a map that led to a destination, even though she knew nothing about the destination. She had to prepare her equipment and brace herself for a rough journey, though sometimes these treks turned out to be much easier than expected. The nights are long, she said, because that's when she feels most vulnerable. But I hold on to the thought that I am under contracts instead of orders these days, and that the military is responsible to protect and provide for its soldiers. I know that's true because I grew up in that world and never saw it fail one soldier. I'll be fine. Chris felt a growing sense of self-reliance as she released her need to be under someone else's command. She got on with her life, and every time she felt lost in the jungle, as she put it, she referred to her soldier archetype and all the symbolic force that it held for her. By substituting the word contract for orders, she signified that her commanding officer was divine. The shadow side of the 12th house can feel very much like a Gothic chamber of horrors, precisely because it is so closely linked to the numerous fragments of our psyche. Many of our addictions and compulsions are rooted in our deepest fears of being abandoned, which thrive in the shadows of this house. And now we're going to just end with a little paragraph here. Now that you've familiarized yourself with the nature and role of each of the 12 houses that make up the archetypal wheel, it's time to create your own personal wheel. By following the intuitive process outlined in the next chapter, you will place each of your 12 archetypes into a different house of the wheel. This, your personal archetype wheel, will become the single most important roadmap to working with your archetypes and understanding your sacred contract. So if at this point you haven't figured out your archetype and you would like to before moving on, this would be a really good time to do it. I made a list for myself, but as I read each and every single definition, because I read them to you, and as I read this book a little bit more, I feel like I need to go and reevaluate those 12 because some things have come to light while I've been reading this to you. And if you have made your list and that same thing has happened to you, I fully expect it to happen several times. As the author said, it's already happened. I've already changed it like 3 or 4 times. So, and I'm going to do it again, I'm sure. Okay, so we're done with this chapter, and in chapter 8, we're going to be talking about creating your chart of origins. So just like the author said, we're going to be putting together our own wheel. So, and even if you're not wanting to put the energy into figuring out your archetypes and then putting them in the wheel right now, that's totally okay. You really have to be in a mind space for it, because even just doing it on a surface level equals facing things about yourself that aren't the easiest. And as you go into it deeper and deeper, I suspect that we will find many more things about ourselves that are the shadow aspects that maybe we didn't recognize before, or we didn't want to recognize before, or perhaps that we see in other people, and deep down we see it in ourselves, and that's why we dislike it so much. I find that a lot in myself when I have a dislike about somebody else, about another person. There's always something about them that I can see in myself, and it's something I don't like in myself. I've gotten really good at doing that, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it has helped me recognize a lot of traits in myself. So it can't be all bad, especially if I try to do something constructive with it, right? Something like this and so many other things. So yeah, there's quite a few sections in this book, but there's going to be there's a section in here that needs to go together. So, and it's not too terribly long. So as I said, I'm going to do whatever I can just to not break up any exercises. I don't mind breaking up chapters or sections, but exercises I like to keep together. And this chapter is not very long compared to our other chapters. So I don't, you know, I'll try not to make too many videos, but this is a record so far as far as how many videos I have made for this book, considering we still have we still have about 3 or 4 chapters left, I'm pretty sure. Let me see here. Yeah, we're going to be on chapter 8, and there's 11 chapters in this book. So yeah, 4 more, and the appendix, it looks like there's a lot more than there is actually, because the appendix is quite long. That's the part that had all of our definitions. So this right here is the appendix. So we only have this much left of the book. So we'll see how many videos that's going to equal at the end. All right. Thank you all so very much for joining me. And as always, I love you guys very much. And please take care of yourself. Please take care of those around you. Stay safe. Stay in a place of gratitude and grace. And I will see you all again soon for the start of our chapter 8. Take care until then. Bye-bye.